lovely people, welcome back to a Writing Tip Tuesday. I'm Sammy and I'm a writer who likes to help other writers become better writers. This week I want to talk to you about a technique that is actually pretty important for many stories that not a lot of people talk about how to actually implement. It's something that you can easily accidentally compare yourself with your first draft or your second draft to people who are published, which can be very discouraging, especially if you aren't quite sure how to implement it. And that technique is foreshadowing, which I'm sure you know because it says it in the title, in the thumbnail. So what is foreshadowing? It's when you write something in your story that is a hint of some future event or conflict or something that is going to happen, and you put it in the story before the reader knows the significance. Foreshadowing can be super helpful for getting your reader to have that aha, dah moment at the end when you actually bring up the future event that you have been foreshadowing, and it gives them the feeling of figuring out the clues or finding out what the clues were leading up to if they didn't figure it out. Every writer is different, so I'm going to give you some tips from my perspective that helped me and some other people I know develop their foreshadowing in their stories. And if it doesn't work for you, I'm sorry, but it's something to get you started to help discover what will work for you. If you haven't figured it out at all yet, this is going to be at least a step in the right direction. I would suggest that your first draft, you just let the pieces fall where they may. Don't worry about foreshadowing, just worry about getting the story to a somewhat cohesive full arc and meeting your characters and knowing how they sound, what they care about, all of that kind of stuff, and developing that conflict. When you do that, some things may naturally arise during your writing process that you're like, wow, that could be some really good foreshadowing if I make this happen later. And that's great, but you're not actively trying to say, okay, I know that this event is gonna happen, so I'm gonna foreshadow that here, here, and here. Because there's a chance that that event may not be the end-all be-all once you get through your first draft. So just let pieces come up as they do, and if you end up having an event at the end that you were like, wow, I didn't expect that at all, make a note of that, and then you have something that you can foreshadow during your second draft. When you finish your first draft and you are ready to start reading through it to make notes for your second draft, I would keep an eye out for any moments that feel like foreshadowing, that either you're not sure they come back, you didn't bring back, or you could switch to foreshadow something that actually does happen. And keep an eye out for any situations that could benefit from foreshadowing. And if you have any moments that you're like, oh, I think that there's a moment in this scene that I could foreshadow this villain coming in, so I'm gonna have to add something in there. Make sure you mark that too, because that's gonna help you so much going through your second draft. And obviously you'll be looking out for other things while you're reading through, so don't feel like you have to exclusively read through for foreshadowing moments. You're gonna see a lot of things all at once, and that's okay. That's the point of rereading. That's the point of revising and keeping an eye out on all of the things that you're focusing on. And maybe you don't focus on foreshadowing from your first draft to your second draft. Maybe you focus on character development or dialogue or something along those lines, and make sure that whatever point you are at, when you're ready to start foreshadowing, you're taking notes on the draft that you're working with. When you get towards the end of your draft, where you have all of those crazy events and like the conflict and the climax, all of that kind of stuff going on, all of the big points, highlight anything that you think could be foreshadowed, or I guess make a note, because it's probably going to be a whole couple of pages and you don't want to highlight all that. But keep an eye out for something that you think could be foreshadowed. And there's not a requirement that every big event in your story is foreshadowed. It has to be something that would naturally have something leading up to it. For example, if you've got a character that is on your main character's side for a majority of the book or the story, and towards the end they turn out to be a villain, you're probably going to want to show some moments before that where they maybe don't have as much compassion as the rest of the hero team. And it's like, you're a little bit off there, huh? So when they end up being a villain, it's not like a total stab in the back to your readers. It's like, I knew something was off about you. I knew something was wrong with you. It's not gonna surprise them entirely, but it will surprise them enough. Whereas if you have something where like, there's a trap door in this hike that they're taking through this temple and there's a trapdoor, you're probably not gonna have to foreshadow that. That's probably just gonna be like a surprise that happens in the moment. There's not gonna be clues leading up to every major surprise, but some of them will benefit from them because it won't feel like your readers are getting totally flipped and turned around. Some basic sort of general tips I have around foreshadowing are to keep it subtle. You don't want your readers to figure out the end of the story by page 25. You want to like sprinkle in hints or just like not give hints, because if you just say, hey, here's how it's gonna happen really early on, even if it feels like a hint, if you're giving too much, it's always gonna be too much. You always wanna err on the side of, maybe they won't catch this. That's one of the benefits I think of foreshadowing, is that you don't think about it until you know the answer. So if people reread your book, they'll see, oh my God, they totally said that. I should have known it was coming because it's right there, because they won't know what it means until they know what it means, which is one of the points of adding those moments of foreshadowing. Keep in mind that some things are better as surprises. You don't need hints towards every single thing. Like that trapdoor example, there's probably a lot more that just aren't coming to my head right now, but you don't have to make every event that happens something that is foreshadowed. It's not required. It's okay if you want to foreshadow a lot of things, and it's okay if you want to foreshadow exclusively one little thing. It all depends on the event, the story, the characters, the writer, every possible variable that there is. So if it doesn't feel right for you to foreshadow it, don't. There's no problem with that. Keep in mind that you're not going to get the best or any foreshadowing in your first draft, and maybe not your second draft, and that's okay, because things are going to change and develop and grow and become more dramatic or less dramatic or more realistic or whatever it is that's going on, and you're not gonna know how that's gonna look until you're at that point in your draft. So foreshadowing may be something that needs to sit on the back burner at the beginning of your edits, and that's fine. If you're not positive what the events are gonna be, that is probably the best thing to do, rather than pushing so much energy into making these subtle hints towards something that may change in the future. When you know where your story is going, when you know everything about the arc of conflict and the character growth and all of that kind of stuff, foreshadowing is going to come a lot easier to you. So if you're having a hard time with foreshadowing, maybe just focus on solidifying the story. And once you really feel confident in where your story is going, who your characters are, and all of that, then give it a look through for moments for foreshadowing, because they're gonna jump out a lot easier for you because you know what happens. And knowing what happens is a big part of knowing when to hint at what happens. But that is all that I've got for you today. If you enjoyed this video or you learned something from it, please leave a like. It'll really help me out. If you have anything that you are working on right now that you're not quite sure how to get the hang of, and you would like some advice from me to do some research into it, I would be happy to. Just leave me a comment down below. If you don't want to miss any of my uploads, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell next to it. I'm here every Tuesday and Saturday for Writing Tip Tuesdays and Story Study Saturdays. So I will see you guys on Saturday for a story study.